Hi guys, what's going on? I am Zura. Let me introduce myself a little bit. I am a chess international master, originally from a small Eastern European country, Georgia, now residing in Dallas, Texas since 2015. A little bit about this channel. I have attempted content creation through different forms. I still stream on Twitch from time to time to connect with my community. However, I've been wanting to get started my personal YouTube channel where I'll be sharing my journey towards the Grandmaster and hopefully motivate you to get better and work on your game. Cheers. Let's do this together. I would greatly appreciate even a little bit of attention and support. May be too much to ask this early, but all I'm asking you is to give it a chance, give me a chance. All right, now let's jump into what is the agenda for today. 2 weeks ago, I played one of the strongest open tournaments in Charlotte, North Carolina. US Masters attracts over 200 people, at least that's what it attracted this year. I think about 35 Grandmasters and over 50 International Masters. So a lot of title players, very strong competition. And yeah, I have played it a few times. I guess we'll have to see what happens with the results. Now, I probably will split this entire tournament into three. If I'm able to squeeze it in two parts, probably in two, but most likely it's going to be three parts. So let's jump right into it. The first game was against 2150 rated player. I'm not sure where he is from actually, but young, young and perspective player, I would say. So I'm playing with black colors, and just to give you a little bit of a context, uh, leading to this tournament, I had not played in a long time. The classical game, I think 4 months before this. So I could definitely feel the rust. Over the board play rust is real. When you haven't played long, you usually take longer on your moves. So time mismanagement often becomes an issue. Personally, for me, when I'm out of form, not to say that our calculation is usually not as sharp as normal. Having that considered, that was an important factor in this game, as you will see here in a little bit. So my opponent starts with d4. I responded with knight f6, c4, e6. Now he goes knight to f3. Knight to f3 is an indication for Queen's Indian system, Queen's Indian opening. If knight c3, then that would be Ninzo Indian opening. And if black responds with bishop b4, there are a few other options as well. So after knight f3, a little bit of a thought here, I decided to transpose to Queen's Gambit declined positions, which is kind of standard way to meet the Queen's Gambit in general. My opponent takes on d5, e takes d5, knight c3, c6, and now we are headed to Carlsbad structure, Carlsbad positions. Okay, Carlsbad structure positions is one of the most common positions with the first move d4, queen's pawn opening usually, and when black plays e65, they capture, and now we are left with the pawn majority for black on the queen side and pawn majority for white on the king side. And well, center is kind of balanced at the moment since c pawn is very firmly protecting also d5. All right, my opponent goes here queen c2, which makes a lot of sense because black wanted to play bishop f5. This diagonal b1 h7 diagonal is a very important one in these positions. Whoever gets their bishop there first usually has the initiative and more flexibility for movement of their pieces. So my opponent does not want to allow me to play bishop f5 here. If I play g6, I was a little concerned about this move, bishop g5. And now the point is, if I go bishop f5 anyways, if I go queen b3, and at the moment my knight on f6 is quite loose, and it's not so easy to comfortably defend the b7 pawn. And black usually never wants to weaken their pawn structure even more with moves like b6. All right, I think this will suggest a lot of counterplay here for white. So I decided to play a simple looking bishop e7, continue development. Opponent goes bishop g5, short castle e3, knight b to d7, bishop d3, rook e8. Now this pawn is not hanging on h7 at the moment because if bishop f6, knight takes f6, and the second knight comes into defending that h7 pawn. So I want to stop and take a second here. Black now black's main idea in this position is to basically finish development in simple terms. Play knight f8, get the bishop out, and enter the middle game without having committed to any weaknesses in their position. And also, black doesn't have a bad piece. After that, light square bishop will be developed. Black basically has no bad piece. White's idea in these positions a lot of times is to castle short and then start rook b1, b4, b5. This is called minority attack versus majority, which aims at weakening the c6 pawn and then basically targeting that c6 pawn with the heavy pieces like queen, rook, after knight jumps on a4, for example. All right, those are some of the typical plans. Let's continue now what happened in the game. h3. My opponent plays an interesting move here, h3, which has been attempted many times, but it is not the main try. Main try would definitely be simply to go short castle, and then probably I would play knight f8 and maybe then play h3. But my opponent's idea here is a little different. After I go knight to f8, he retreats the bishop back to f4. So white refrains from trading dark square bishops in the position, and even loses a tempo for that purpose. However, it's not so clear what is black going to do with the tempo. I did go with it anyways, knight g6 to attack that bishop. Now that bishop retreats back to h2, and then I proceeded with offering the trade of the dark square bishops. Queen takes d6. At the moment, this knight wants to jump to f4, but after castle, which is what happened in the game, it's not so clear what is my knight doing on g6. When bishop was on g5, idea of this knight g6 is usually to try restrict the mobility of that bishop, threaten it with h6, and then force bishop f6, queen f6, and then potentially knight h4. But at the moment, the way this happened here, white did lose the tempo, but black also doesn't have a comfortable way to use this tempo, basically, because that knight is not going anywhere. So I decided to continue playing normal looking moves, which is like bishop d7. Computer does not like, as you can see, bishop d7 because it allows immediate b4, and if I capture there rook b1 and my b7 pawn is hanging, which I saw during the game, but I was not gonna take on b4. After b4 I was gonna play rook c8 and continue kind of playing what happened in the game. So after rook b1 though, I decided to play rook e7 with the idea of doubling up on the e file and try to jump knight e4 to gain some space for my pieces and activity. Now let's talk a little bit about b6 here. My opponent wants to play b5 and chronically weaken the c6 pawn. So I played b6 with the idea of meeting b5 with c5. This is more or less standard idea, not super common in the positions, but it's also not unseen for sure. My opponent goes rook fc1, and I bring rook to e8. Here I was a little surprised actually that my opponent played b5 anyways. I thought he was gonna move the knight, move the knight away, let's say somewhere, I'm not sure, and then play b5, so I don't have the possibility of pushing c5 since he's attacking that twice, or go moves like a4, a5, and weaken my queen side additionally that way. So that was my expectation. I was pretty happy when I saw b5. And after c5, d takes c5, b takes c5. This pawns does seem to be in the spirit of hanging pawns. But hey, hanging pawns are not always the weakness. As we will see here in a few moves, those hanging pawns get moving and create substantial problems for white. Let's see how they handle the situation here. So bishop f5 was played by my opponent, which I thought was an inaccuracy during the game as well. I definitely thought that this rook has to stay on the d file in order to put the pressure on my center and not allow me to play d4 comfortably now. D4 will not happen because he can just take on g6 and then take an extra pawn. So I was probably gonna go knight e5 here, finally finding something useful to do for that knight, trade it into a defensive piece there. The knight takes e5, probably, not sure actually what is the best way to capture it, but I'm assuming it's the rook, or maybe queen not to allow e4, because after rook takes here, he can try to go e4, since I'm not able to capture there. I was thinking of some lines along the rook g5, rook h5, but I think you can agree that this can be very unclear. So instead, my opponent plays bishop f5, which I was very happy to see during the game. I go knight e5, knight takes e5 now because the f3 is hanging with the check. So he has to take on e5, and I took back rook e5, which actually I think the computer says that bishop f5 is slightly better, just to do all of this with the tempo. All of this meaning these trading operations here. Queen f5 and then take back rook e5 attacking, and this queen will have to retreat back, and basically black gets the same position with the tempo up. However, my concern here was knight f7, and this is the over-the-board rust that I'm talking about. When you haven't played in a long time, you start seeing ghosts. I'm thinking here knight takes f7, takes there, takes there, takes there, takes there, and now f6 is hanging. I have to basically take this guy, takes on b1, and I'm down a pawn. However, I overlooked a simple response here. On knight takes f7, I can just move queen d7 or e6, defending this guy, maintaining a threat there, and now black will win a piece on the next move on f7. So I missed that one tempo there. Rook takes e5, bishop takes d7, knight takes d7. However, I did like this knight moving to d7 because I thought that now my d4 comes with quite a threat, I would say, because queen can go already on the king side immediately. This rook is one jump away from targeting that king as well. So yeah, I was already getting pretty happy with my position, and with the opponent's next move, I was already definitely convinced that I am doing better here. Even if it's a tiny bit better, I realized a4 could not have been the most critical attempt here. I think rook belongs on the d file again. Rook d1 was an absolute must to slow down this d4 push. And I was gonna do that anyways, actually. And when he plays queen d3, I was thinking of going, I think, queen to f6. Well, apparently computer says that's not it. Well, actually he can just take queen d4, and I don't have this check rook e1, because if he takes there, I will win the queen, and my back rank is actually covered with that knight from d7 to f8. However, this trick doesn't work, because after rook e1, white can just move the king to h2, and the rook on b1 is protected. So after I take there, the knight on c3 is just guarding the rook on b1. So none of the tactics here work for black. So again, rook d1, yes, the crucial move there, but my opponent goes a4 and quite fast too. Here I'm already convinced that I should be doing better. I play d4 instantly, and after my opponent goes queen d3, I go queen to f6. Now queen to f6. So if he played rook d1, it would be the same thing. I would play queen to f6 anyways. And point being that you can't take on d4 again because I have this rook e1 check, right? He decides to play queen d3, idea of which is actually quite smart. After I play queen f6, white goes rook to f1. We already mentioned that taking on d4 is not a possibility because I have rook e1 discovered check to win the queen here, right? And again, my back rank is covered with the knight on f8. However, he goes rook f1 using the pin along the d file that this knight on d7 is not protected. So now if I take there, queen takes d7, and I think this pawn on c3 is not going anywhere. So I decided to play knight f8 in this position. Here, to give the context, under 10 minutes, probably even less, like I would say around 5 minutes. My thinking process is kind of affected, starts to get affected here by a little bit of a panic. And again, when you haven't played in a long time, you are it doesn't feel good to be in time trouble immediately in the first game. So I'm looking at my candidate moves basically were rook g5 and knight f8. Knight f8 wants to give up this pawn and then bring this knight quickly into the attack. Rook g5, which probably is a healthier move, and I kind of understood this during the game. Idea behind this move is black wants to play immediately here knight e5 and knight f3 check. You don't have knight e4 because I can go queen g6 and now attacking the g2 and pinning also this knight on e4, so you can't capture on g6. Surprisingly enough, my computer says here rook b to e1. Black is still fine, but I didn't even consider that white would allow capturing on g2 here, and then just move king h1 and say, oh, I'm chilling. And your rook, by the way, is gonna get trapped most likely after queen f3. After rook g5, I was thinking along the human lines, which I think is takes there and play f4 with the idea of not allowing knight e5 and also attacking the g5 with the tempo. If I go to g6, then knight e4, and this rook on g6 is quite uncomfortable. He will try to push f5, and then I'll have to swing that rook around. And not being on g file anymore, it kind of defeats the purpose. I realized the main move here has to be queen g6, takes there, probably go something like rook f to d1, and now most likely this is going to simplify into a draw because I'm threatening to go rook e2, probably play something like that to start the rook e2 idea. I'll probably play c2 there, and after rook d2 we're gonna trade these pawns, and resulting in game most likely will be a draw. All right, now I did not quite want to go for the equality here. I want to keep the tension on the board, so I went for a little gamble here, knight f8, allowing e takes d4, e takes d4, queen takes d4, knight goes to e6. Now, I could feel that objectively here, white should have a way to defend somehow. And afterwards, computer says that queen d7 is the way to attack this guy. And after knight f4, just go rook b4, hit this guy on f4, and also not allow rook to move to g file at the moment because there will be a checkmate, right, on the back rank. The rook is hanging on e8. That was the one I did not actually look at that during the game. What I did look at during the game was queen d6, and I was actually not sure what to do about this because you can go queen c6, and I don't have this move rook c5 because he has knight d4 now attacking my f6 queen with the check. So after I take there, takes f6 with the check intermediate, then takes the rook, and then I'm down in exchange. I was very happy when I saw my opponent grabbing this pawn on a a7, which apparently is actually still good. I go knight f4. My opponent goes rook b4. I go rook g5 to hit this pawn on g2, and my opponent eliminates this knight on f4, sacrifices and exchange back to avoid getting mated, basically. Uh, However, obviously, a brutal computer here says king goes to h1 and just leave that g2 pawn. Doesn't matter. If you take on h3 here, you have knight e4. If you go, well, is there no? I guess queen h6 that doesn't do anything. I would be very scared of this, but the point is, if I take on f2, king g1, and the king escapes. Knight f4 check. There's no mate there because he has knight h3. And after takes, actually, I'm just down a rook, and I don't even have a check. I can move the rook. So white will get the queen back on time to defend everything, and then I'm just down a rook. So luckily for me, my opponent captures on f4 here. I capture back, and now we're back onto unclear terms. Knight goes to e2 because I was still threatening to play queen f3 here, threatening checkmate, and the knight gets back into defending, and I quickly make this move, queen going to b4. Well, I'm already down to 2 minutes probably in this position, so I wanted to make sure that these pawns are stopped. Now, better move apparently would be queen c4, and when he goes knight g3, I can try going h5, h4. And where does that knight go? I think that knight may have to end up going to h1, or you have to lose an additional tempo to move the rook. And then I'll play h4, you'll move the knight away, and then there is again that weakness of a g2 pawn. And these pawns are not fast enough, because if you run that pawn down, then I'll just play queen b4 and try to block it. That's kind of what happened actually in the game. He started running this pawn, and man, this is a critical moment probably in the game, which was not handled properly from my side. So I'm probably around 2 minutes here, maybe a little less. And my opponent plays this move b6 with 20 minutes on the clock. So I'm thinking, do I take the knight? Can I take the knight on e2? I think I can take the knight on e2. Queen a8 check, then queen goes to f8, b7, and now I'm thinking, how do I stop that pawn? Rook goes back to e8, attacking the queen, so queen most likely will have to go up. But how do I make progress here? How do I get rid of these pawns? Because if white manages to play a5 and a6, then these pawns are gonna be very scary, especially having a few seconds on the clock. I don't think this is the position, rook b1 or c1, you want to be handling with all, like, both of these pawns basically near the 7th rank, and queen and the rook, all kinds of tactics in the air basically. So I decided not to take on e2. However, the move that I overlooked is queen b4. Queen b4 is a very strong here, securing the b file and threatening queen e4, excuse me. This is the key idea. So when he goes rook c1 to try to go there, or tries to go queen a8 to do the same thing, this is actually what I was concerned about, but I didn't see this move, queen e4. And now I'm threatening a checkmate. I'm also attacking the queen here. So black just wins basically. This is a win. If you go you have to promote to b8, and I'll take on a8, and I'm just a rook up here again. So a very unfortunate miss. I think if I had few extra minutes here, I would definitely take that on e2. And it's kind of intuition moment also, when opponent makes a move and you feel like, I think I can take this. It should be working, but your rational mind tells you, just play safe, don't take it. So that's what I did, kind of. I played rook a5 here, queen c7, and then played h5. Man, this is another another unclear decision here. Okay, first, now actually taking there is not good, because queen c8 and then b7, and now I have to here rook c1, and I'm actually in kind of trouble here because he is threatening to promote to a new queen here, and what do I do? right? There's a fun line actually here. This is still going, the game is kind of still going, but I'll probably end up being a pawn down here, something like that, and then going rook to d8. So I have an Alekhine's gun on the 8th rank here, so I'm most likely gonna win one of the queens, but I'm gonna end up being a pawn down still. So yeah, no bueno, no good. So I play h5 instinctively here, which my idea here was that I was considering h5 in previous moves because when knight jumps to g3, I thought this h4 will be useful. However, the situation has changed. Now eliminating these pawns are my priority here, so I have to play h6 and then try to just get these guys and play exchange up, right? So I go h5. My opponent pushes b7. I was actually concerned about this move knight c3, which I thought was very tricky, and it is very tricky because he wants to block this and then start pushing the pawn. But he played b7 immediately. Now that allows me to play rook a7, and this pawn is kind of doomed. He goes queen c8. I move rook to f8 in order to defend that rook, and my opponent goes queen to f5 to attack this pawn on h5. Now you see why it would be better to have pawn on h6. Man, during the game I was so upset about this. Why did I put the pawn on h5? But okay, I had seconds on the clock, so I'm thinking, well, okay, I can still play g6 though, and attack the queen, defend the pawn, and then take these two pawns. It was absolutely necessary to take this pawn immediately and then take on a4 and play this position. I think considering that I'm playing 300 points, rating points lower opponent than me, I think I would still have a very reasonable chances of squeezing out a win here. Probably try to activate the rooks or try to trade one rook, depending on how white decides here to set up the defenses for sure. So objectively should be close to equality, but I think practically black still has chances of trying to play for the win with an exchange for knight and a pawn, basically, right? One side of the board here makes it defensive side definitely easier, but still, I think it's still position is still squeezable. What I played instead instinctively was g6, and you can take a second here if you want to look for what is the best move for white, which I completely missed during the game. If you did actually pause the video, congrats. That means you're serious about your chess here. Yes, a rook to b1 is the move, man. Rook to b1 now attacking my queen, and this queen is under attack, but at the moment it is protecting the rook. So what do? If I move the queen away, then that's a disaster. Queen c8, and now it's like what's gonna happen here? I don't think black is better at all anymore. Like here, like push this pawn or bring the knight over. This is definitely not what I wanna see, especially with seconds on the clock. So I don't have anything else to do but to take gf. And now we're gonna end up in this position, which I get the b7 pawn, but white will get my both pawns on the king side, and this will make it very easy for white to make a draw. Now I actually tilted here and played rook b1, which literally after I played realized that this is actually a blunder, because now I can't even win the f2 pawn because there will be I was gonna play here and then rook here, but of course knight c3, and I'm gonna lose an exchange there, right? And most likely a game. So I had to play immediately rook to b2 here. So if he plays rook e5, rook a2, and I would still have won the f2 pawn. Maybe try to play that little bit for a win. Should objectively be a draw. But I was already very tilted here, rook b1, and I realized now he can just play rook to e5, and if I go rook to a2, he can go knight to c1 or c3. I think this is kind of what happened in the game, and I can't even take the pawn. So I immediately offered the draw, which was accepted by my opponent. And that was the first game. I guess the big takeaway from this would be that over the board rust is real. make sure that if you hadn't played for some time over the board, and then you plan on getting back into action, you do a bunch of tactics and make sure that before the tournament you work on your practical decision making. All right, cool. Let's cut here for game one and jump on to game two. So a little bit of a rough start here, drawing 300 points lower than me, probably losing 4 or 5 rating points there. But next two rounds here that I actually want to include in the first part of it, I think was quite fun. Let's see. All right, we are on round two. Here I got white colors against a very formidable opponent, a friend of mine, Gunnar Andersen. Now Gunnar has been close to 2300 actually. Lately, I think he's dropped a bunch of rating and is down to like higher 2100s. But objectively, he is definitely stronger than that. And quite good with dynamics, actually, as you will see in this game. So I start with c4. My opponent goes g6. I had actually known that he is a King's Indian player, so I decided to avoid the mainstream theory and continue with more in the style of English setups. Bishop g2, short castle e4. I don't play d4 immediately, allowing them to get the hang of d4 square. I'll develop knight g2 and then simply d3 with the solid center and the perspective of playing f4, f5, g4, and expanding on the king side. That's the ideal scenario, of course, like h3, bishop e3 has to be played. Yes, h3 is a multi-purpose move here. If bishop ever wants to land on e3, it takes away the g4 square from the knight. Also, if I want to push f5 here and then g4, this h3 is a necessary prophylaxis, basically. My opponent plays rook b8. I develop my bishop to e3 and b5. On b5, I decided to play b3, not to show my cards basically on the queen side here. If you take, I can take with the b pawn, I can take with the d pawn. And yeah, nothing really changed, right, with the opening of a b5. As it turned out, it does change a little bit, so we'll see that later in the game here. So knight goes to h5, I play the rook to c1. Now, why rook c1? I wanted to kick this knight away because when knight is there, now f4 is not going to be possible. He has this move, knight takes g3, a little tactic which I almost blundered, takes there, takes on f4, and now my knight is hanging on c3, and my bishop and knight on the other side of the board is also hanging. So I can't do f4, so I decided it would be useful to bring rook to c1 to have this knight protected, and in some lines also get out of this x-ray of a bishop, right, on the long diagonal. He goes knight to d4, which makes sense, I think. If not, white wants to play d4 themselves. So blocking that, and especially considering when opponent has an outpost like that, they definitely don't want to pass on it. I decided to go g4 here. If I play f4, I didn't like the prospects of this at all. He can try to take here, and then maybe take here, and then take here, and probably like play f5. And where is my center going here, right? It very well may become the targets of black pieces. So I wanted to maintain this control and not give an opponent too much counterplay. So g4, kicking the knight back, obviously immediately going back doesn't work because d4 is hanging. So he takes on e2 first, I take back with the knight. Actually, there was an interesting line here, b4, which I somewhat looked into during the game. Point is, if I take here, then he takes here, and basically sacrifices this pawn on c3. But obviously my pawns here, my kingside pawns, has also been altered, right? It's definitely been damaged there. So I was not 100% sure during the game who is better here. And computer agrees with me. Apparently, it says zero zeros. Go something like Queen H4, and then maybe I don't even know. Like, how do I defend this guy? Maybe King H2 and like C6. Continue the normal play here. Bishop E6, F5. Yeah, I think game is very much unclear. So on b4, I was gonna go knight d5, and then he can take here and just now move the knight back. Point being that if you take, okay, fine, then it's the equal position. If you don't take, I'm gonna move the knight away, and now your knight might end up in a little bit of a trouble here. So I should probably then try to play something like this, c5, to give the breathing space to that knight to b6. But man, I'm not sure if this is better at all with white anymore. Well, he doesn't go for b4, takes on e2. I take back, knight goes to f6. Now queen d2 makes a lot of sense, right? To get on that diagonal. B takes c4, b takes c4. D takes c4 is also interesting idea, which I was seriously considering actually, with the plan to kind of like to pivot to a different plan here, go rook d1 and then play c5. But I was inclined towards playing f4, and if I took it with the d pawn, then f4 makes my e4 pawn isolated, right? So that's why I decided to take back with the b pawn and then threaten to go f4. So, but my opponent doesn't give me an easy out here. He plays h5, attacking my g4 pawn. Now, if I push g5, I was thinking he can go h7. I realized I can try to keep the position as it is right now. Maybe go c5. That's what computer is recommending here. But if I do go f4, which was my original intention, he takes there, and now rook b2. That file that we said earlier was not doing much for black, now is doing actually quite a bit, because if I go here to keep defending this pawn, he can just take my pawn, and I mean, I'm pawn down. Then he can play c5 first and then take this also. So what am I doing, right? The knight on h7 might not be very active, but hey, a pawn is a pawn. I'm down a pawn. So I already realized g5 here is not so easy continuation. So I decided to keep it under control. F3, play knight g3, go bishop g5, and then try to make progress there. Okay, but he goes c5. And to basically balance the center here, not allow me to play d4. Now I go knight g3 with that idea of, yes, taking there, bishop g5, or immediately bishop g5. And he makes a very interesting move on knight g3, which I kind of overlooked during the game, or misevaluated. Knight to h7. Now sacrificing this pawn with the idea of going queen h4. And that's kind of what happened in the game. Queen h4. I have to defend that guy on g3 with king h2 because my pawn on h3 was also hanging. And black took g takes h5. The move that I was seriously concerned during the game here is g5, not allowing me to play f4. And look at my bishop on g2. This is a disastrous bishop. All right. Now, problem for both sides, I guess, is that neither side can make clear progress, because you also can bring this knight back immediately to get this pawn because the g5 is hanging. I also don't have a clear way to make progress here, so I was thinking to neutralize the open b file here, only open file actually, in the position, play rook b1, and when he plays something like that, man, I spent a lot of time on this position and I was not sure what to do, what move to make. All right. First, I was thinking play something like that, but that kind of allows knight f6 now, and then, yeah, not sure again. Like then he may try to take there. All right. If I go queen f2, then again knight f6, and that didn't accomplish anything else. Now, what it accomplishes took away the pressure from g5. I did think actually during the game here, which I'm very proud because computer says that is the best move, a4, a5 with the idea of rook b6. I'm not sure if this actually happened in the game. This is what I would do, but I definitely had a thought that I may have something here to make progress, and I'm not sure how does black make progress. I was thinking maybe bishop here, but I realized here rook b6, I should have already some counterplay on the other side of the board, but I thought if he plays here, I'm not sure, then he is taking there, but even if he takes there, there's no clear way to make progress, so I was thinking just take the pawn, return back, and try to play with that a pawn. And yes, You may say that the g2 bishop is very sad, and I was worried about that as well. But well, sometimes desperate situations require desperate measures, as they say, right? So I was pretty happy when I saw g takes h5 on the board. Then I jump to f5, knight f5. My opponent takes bishop f5, he takes f5, and king on h8. So this bishop is a set piece, but bear with me. It will come to the life here after f4, and this is where game gets really interesting. I think also a critical moment in the game. My opponent decided to play a very enterprising way here, which I don't think if it was the whether it was best or not. Well, actually, I do know that it was not the best, but it was definitely an exciting try here for both sides. So let's see what I'm talking about. So if black plays rook g8, most likely I have to play queen f2, eliminate that queen, and after bishop h6, bishop h6 is actually critical here moves to try trade basically on f4. I most likely will play rook to c2 because after trades on f4 there will be rook b2, so I need to defend the second rank. And after all the trades here, we are headed to this endgame where basically I have a bishop, he has the knight. My bishop is quite strong, but the knight also has the potential of, like, let's say jumping around to dark squares, and if king gets to f6, knight gets to e5 or d4, I don't see why black should be any worse there. All right, so rook g8 would probably be the most solid try here. However, my opponent decides to go knight to f6 with the idea of going knight g4 check if I take in getting the dark square bishop. Definitely don't want to give the dark square bishop there, so I retreat the king back, and then he decides to go king to bishop to h6. Now putting the pressure along this. Now, okay, f takes e5, and here is probably the critical moment of the game. I'm down to a minute, probably like minute and a half, maybe like 2 minutes max. My opponent has about 10 minutes on the clock. So what does he do? Well, rook goes to b2. Truly in the spirit of a King's Indian player, sacrifice anything for a dark square bishop and dark square dominance here, which actually, I'm gonna lie if I said I did not see it. I kind of glimpsed at it, but okay, what am I gonna do? Not take fe, right? So I have to take fe. Let's see rook b2 in a second here, but if it excuse me, if he took on e3, then takes on e5, I'm not sure actually. I should try to stop this rook b2 invasion, either with rook b1 or rook f2. That's what I was thinking here. I do have this check if I need, but the knight goes back. What if I take here? Oh, that says that that's not good because now rook b8 takes there, rook g3, and now black actually has a lot of pressure here. And I definitely see it, like queen g5, then rook g8. Oh man, I would not want to play this position with like seconds on the clock. I was very happy to see this pseudo tactic, kinda. Well, if I take queen b2, then he probably gets what he wants here. King h1, then d takes e5. If I take there, there will be like it's not even hanging actually anything. Rook e8 or bishop d4. Now here queen g3, bishop f4. Man, yeah, this guy is still hanging. Yeah, dark squares look chronically weak here. So the move that I was banking on, basically putting my hopes on, is this move, bishop to f2. Bishop f2 is a kind of cold move here, which forces a queen trade, and now we are headed into the end game here, which you will see. Bishop takes d2 was the correct move, but my opponent very quickly actually plays rook d2. And this is another takeaway. When you're playing higher rated opponent and you get into these exciting positions, I get it. I've been in the same on the other side of this equation a lot of times, and you get excited and you start to make decisions based on that feeling rather than staying objective, which can be very tricky. So if you do have a lot of time, like my opponent had, like compared to seconds, 10 minutes is a lot of time, right? Take your time. Make sure that this trickery is based on a healthy idea rather than just opponent not seeing the best response. All right. And that's kind of what happens here. He plays rook d2. If bishop d2, I could have taken the bishop there, bishop c1, I mean queen, bishop c1, bishop f6, king moves on the side. And if I take rook c1, he has rook g8, and I'm actually losing here. So I cannot do that. I have to take on d6 and try now to play this position and promote the pawn. This knight is, rook is hanging, by the way, so you probably have to play like rook a2, and then I'll play d7, and on rook g8 I most likely will promote, and it's gonna oh nope, I can't promote immediately because I'm getting mated right here and blind swine mate, right? So king h1, rook takes g2, and then probably I have to move the rook away, and then it's gonna end up in a perpetual, because if not I'll promote on d8. So that will most likely end up in a draw. Actually, bishop takes d2, but my opponent here goes for more, rook d2, and I could tell that he did not calculate this in detail. He played it so fast, there's no way he could have calculated this precisely. So rook takes d2, I take on h4, rook goes to g8. Now it looks like I'm in trouble here, but bishop takes f6, and then I give that rook back. What becomes the point here is my passer and the bishop on f6. By the way, he also could have played bishop here, rook here, and then d takes e5. But I was thinking of going back, and most likely now we are gonna end up into this position with two minor pieces for a rook and a pawn, which is still not going to be easy here if he gets an additional pawn. But I think I don't have much other option if I'm trying to play for the win. Also I was thinking king's situation here is a little vulnerable for black, so I think this gives white still a very reasonable chances to play for the win. My opponent took rook f2, and I take back king f2, and then bishop takes c1, which makes it kind of easy for me, because after I play e takes d6, now this pawn will be a serious force. If you go bishop g5, I can go bishop here, and that's again a trouble, because if you take, now I'm threatening to go bishop c6, and if you play rook e8, I'll play f6, and then I'm promoting and I'm winning the material in the game pretty much. So rather than going bishop g5, my opponent decides to go back into stopping that pawn here. Bishop goes to c7, but now we are left with this position where I can play bishop e7. I think this is what I did in the game. I believe he played rook here. And I think what I did was bishop going here, check, king here, and I was very happy with this move. Actually, h4. The point of h4 is I probably want to play bishop e4 check and have that king stuck at h6, basically off the game, and then I can move this bishop. Okay, right now if I want to move that bishop, I'll lose the f6 pawn, and then king is very close to these pawns, right? So I definitely don't want to do that. And if king f5, I'll just take on f7, bishop e8, and then I'm going to promote this pawn. So yeah, h4, and what ended up happening here, just to give you a quick idea, basically we played still maybe like 5 moves or so. I played this check, kicked the king away, and then I took on c5, returned back, bishop back to e7, and then just started pushing the pawns. And when my opponent realized there's nothing to stop that, he resigned, right? And that was round 2, okay? Now I think this was a fun game for sure. Shout out to Gunnar. So we are 1.5 at this point out of 2. Just to do a quick takeaway here, I would say when you have time, take your time. No matter you're playing actually lower rated player, higher rated player, but when you're about to go for a committal decision, make sure you double, triple check, right? And quadruple check. All right, let's jump on to game 3. All right, so round 3, well, should I actually do round 3, the 3 enumeration like that, if you're from Europe. If you do got that reference from one of my favorite movies, let me know in the comments. All right. So round three, I'm playing Gergana Peycheva from Bulgaria, who actually resides in Dallas, Texas as well. She goes to University of Texas at Dallas, the school that I went to also. So it was kind of clash of generations here. Let me edit the name there real quick. Um, yep. She is almost a women's grandmaster. I think close to 2300, and actually reigning European team champion with her country, Bulgaria. Bulgaria won European team championship not too long ago. I think she actually came to the tournament straight from there, and we actually ended up flying together to from Dallas to Charlotte. So it was kind of unfortunate that we had to play against each other, but I think competition does that to you sometimes. All right, so let's see what is happening in this game. She goes d4, I go d5, c4, e6, knight c3, knight f6, cd, ed, and we were on the rail here to play another Karlsbad, but I wanted to switch it up a little bit. Plus, this was the second round in a day, so I didn't want to play too dry of a position, so I go for this line bishop b4, which can actually get very sharp. So after e3, h6, if white retreats bishop back to h4, which is the main line, there is a trend, recent trend here. This position leads to a quite unclear positions here after knight goes to e4. I believe the main move is knight e2, and then black can try to go h5 and then h4, and there are a bunch of moves here. Magnus has played against Nepo, I think knight g3, and then going here, and I believe queen g5 is the move here, or c6. Anyways, this is a sharp theory. If you don't go knight e2 and you go something like queen c2, for example, there's still h5, f3, knight takes g3, h takes g3, and then there's this line, knight goes to c6, I believe, or is it queen e7 first, and then the position goes something like this, basically bishop e6, knight c6, long castle, and a very much double-edged play. So I was looking for something like this actually, that was the reason why I played h6 here, but my opponent decides to capture on f6 and play a much simpler type of position. So a3, which basically forces me to take on c3, because otherwise the d5 pawn is hanging, and now we are headed to this position where we have traded two minor pieces and a pawn, but white is lacking the development at the moment. They are behind in development. Black is not behind in development here, but once white finishes the development, then if they do it comfortably, basically, I think white will have a slight advantage due to a better pawn structure. What I mean by that is white has a pawn majority in the center, while black doesn't here, right? Black's center is quite solid, but if white was to able to play something like that, short castle, then queen d2, rook e1, let's say there, and e4, that definitely will result into white's advantage. White could also try to finish the development and then go c4 and increase their pawn structure advantage even more in the center, because most likely either I will have to take there or play c6, which will weaken my d5 pawn additionally. However, white has little problems here finishing the development, and that's kind of what happened. She goes knight to e2, on which I respond with rook to e1. Okay, rook to e8, excuse me, not allowing knight f4. Now you may ask, why wouldn't white start with bishop? Well, if they did start with bishop, I can try to trade it. I was thinking during the game I can also try to go queen g5 to annoy this g2 pawn, but I think white can go queen f3. So I don't think this is any good, because then there is nothing happening there, right? Queen can just go to g3. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. After bishop d3, I probably would have to trade, and then knight f3, and position is very much equalish. I didn't want to go for a dry position, but we still ended up in a dry position here. But luckily for me, she goes knight to e2. She starts with knight e2. I play rook e8 here, not allowing knight f4, right? Because that guy is, it will be pinned. So knight has to go to g3. And now I decide to make this move g6. G6 is actually practically, I think, a good try. My idea is to just push this pawn and annoy your king, and annoy your king side in general. Okay. Now computer does say that white can just go short castle, and I did see this during the game, that even if I push this pawn all the way, it could be annoying, but I think white has everything under control, because he can play g3, and on this move queen f3, there's always knight f4, so I'm never mating there. If I go bishop g4, he can just move the queen away, and then again this knight f4. Actually, during the game I was not sure about this move f3, because if I take bishop f3, then I'm basically volunteering to this deadly pin myself. So that's no bueno. But I was probably gonna retreat this bishop back, but now queen d2 or whatever. There are so many ways here. She can even try to play e4 immediately, maybe. Does queen d2 work? Yeah, queen d2, and then preparing e4. I think white is definitely better here. So luckily for me, she I would say gets a little uncomfortable with this pawn push all the way till h3, so decides to play h3 herself. Now I push this pawn, and knight retreats back to e2, and I apply more pressure on this g2 pawn. Again, objectively, this is probably not much, but practically at the board, especially second round of the day, you don't want to be dealing with this type of issues. So I was happy to get this going, basically. She finds the best move in the position, which is g4. And now, actually, it may turn a little bit. It might be white who will be trying to play on the king side here. If I do take en passant, knight takes, and now this pawn is gonna be scary. I probably have to block that pawn, but even then, queen f3, long castle, rook g1. Oof, this is not looking fun for me, right? And I don't even have a remotely or I was gonna say remote perspective to get the attack going on the queen side. Right, so on g4 I don't take on g3, and I decided now it's time for me to develop my queen side. I have done my development on the king side. It's time now to take care of the queen side. So I go c5, knight to g1. Knight to g1 actually I thought was a little slow here. I don't think that there is a need for that move. As crazy as it may look, white can actually go castle now, but well, once you have played g4, yeah, castling is probably not for lighthearted. So knight goes to g1, reroutes that knight to f3, and I go back to f6, queen f6. Now, after queen f6, clearly I'm threatening to take on d4 here, and then knight d4, queen d4, since there is a pin. g5, I will have this, I was not sure actually which move is better, but I'm gonna say I will have this interesting try, queen to h8. We're defending that pawn, and then this queen will come back from h5, or actually it does a lot of things from h8. So maybe I just leave it where it is for now. But okay, not sure. Maybe like queen is, computer says that queen e7 is better. Queen on h8 is a little too far away from the action. Point being that queen e7 also maintains the attack on g5, so that h5 pawn is not really hanging. So she decides to play king to f1 here, and now computer says it's probably slightly better to try bishop d7, but I was ready to get my queen side rolling with c4 b5. This is in general a very standard idea to play in these pawn structures. Black basically wants to get the queen side counterplay going. White wants to hit in the center, which is kind of what's going to happen here, as we'll see. King goes to g2. I need to connect the rooks, so bishop d7, rook e1, and as you can see, white is now preparing to push e4. Well, I'm going for my queen side expansion with a5, queen to d2, and rook to b8. e4. All right, now here comes the critical action in the game, basically. White's now hitting in the center, I'm hitting on the queen side. Takes on e4, bishop takes e4, b4. White did get a protected passer here, but I'm now on time to push b4, takes everything, and knight takes b4. I was hoping actually here my opponent would fall for some kind of tricks like rook a6 would be. She would be attracted to tricks like rook a6, but I think what I thought, well, does this not work? I thought here I have a nice tactic. Rook takes e4, rook takes e4, and then rook b3, winning the game pretty much. Because if you move the queen, takes on f3, e4 is engaged, 3 is engaged. So I was hoping for that, but she took on b4, knight takes b4, and we are on this equal position, very close to equal position, but I think black has a slight pull or slight push, I guess, due to a safer king. All right, now I think black king is definitely much safer than the white king. Okay, there are a lot of variations where that king might get into trouble, and you will see that's kind of what ends up happening here, and we are already approaching this 10-minute mark, so we'll have to fasten up basically, and start playing basically show our cards. Okay, so knight e5, I play bishop e6, and she decides to move the king away, which with again little time on the clock makes a lot of sense, right? To move it away from all these open diagonals. And checks actually, right? Once knight lands on f4, it would be checking the king, right? So moves the king away. I bring the knight back, and then she goes g5. I would say a little forcing, I think, in a way that if you play something like, let's say, rook a3, can you play something like rook a3? I think I would still go knight f4, then I'll try to play g5, plant that knight on f4, rook b3. The material is equal here, but I think white's gonna have trouble putting the position together. Oops, not rook e3, I was gonna say rook f3, but then I'll go g5, yeah, to plant that knight on f4. So she decides to force the matters here with g5, but I was happy to trade queens actually. Queen goes to f4, and then knight takes c4. So that pawn has been eliminated, but now I'm gonna trade the queens, and after this queen trade I can go knight f4, and your king side pawns are in trouble, right? Computer says that the best defensive move here is bishop to g2. I was gonna play bishop takes h3, but then apparently takes, bishop c6 here is still very close to a draw. I thought I was gonna play rook d8 here, and if he plays d5, I'm gonna play something like bishop, let's say f5 here. What if I go bishop f5? There is this precise move, rook a4, and then white wins the h4 pawn. I probably win that pawn. Here they take this pawn, and most likely this is gonna end up being a draw, even if I win the d5 pawn. I think 2 versus 1 on one side of the board should not be too much difficulty for a defensive side. Now, after knight f4, we're already under probably 3 minutes, maybe 2 minutes here. So this is all time scramble. She goes bishop c6, kind of to to attack my rook, as straightforward as that. I play rook to d8. I think bishop c6, we can see that is an inaccuracy because I'm only getting an additional attack here with rook d8 compared to the previous move. Now white plays d5 with the hope that I'm gonna take on d5, and actually if I do take there, probably I'm still better, knight e4, but the point is that knight e4 will be threatening knight f6, so I have to move the king g7. I can't do this immediately, right? Because of this move knight f6. So I have to play king g7. Now I still think that black has a pressure here because white pawns are weaker, so black has more targets to attack, but should definitely be holdable, no doubt. So on d5, I decided not to take on d5 back and imbalance position more by taking on h3. King goes to h2 and then move bishop to f5. Now I'm threatening f2 pawn, I'm threatening the g5 pawn. So white has to be very precise here. Knight goes to f3, attacking my h4 pawn, and this was kind of critical moment, I think, in the game. I go rook b4. I decided to maintain that that h4 pawn, or at least try to maintain that pawn. And in the time scramble, I think the having a pressure and having an initiative is crucial, absolutely crucial. Now on knight f3, as you can see, it says that take there and play knight e4. This is probably a better try for an advantage, and then we're gonna end up in this end game where I'll most likely win the g5 pawn, and I'll have double pawn on the f file while white has this 1 pawn on the d file, but most likely they're gonna give up that pawn, and then we're gonna end up playing knight and 2 pawns and rook versus bishop and rook. I'm not sure. I think black has a reasonable chances to play for the win, but with the right play should definitely be a draw, or holdable, should definitely be holdable. So rook b4, practically this worked out because my opponent didn't see the best defense here, which was rook a2, simply defending the f2 pawn, and now knight is defending the other pawn on g5. I was gonna play rook f4, but apparently rook e3, and everything is covered. How do I make progress here? Well, I'm not gonna be worse, obviously, but also how does black make progress? Maybe bishop g4 I was thinking, but now that allows that, so you have to take there, and then again we're back to this, which we already talked about, that white has reasonable chances of holding. So in this critical position after rook b4, my opponent goes wrong here, unfortunately for her, unfortunately for me. Rook to a8, she tries to simplify the position, but after takes, I can take on f2, and apparently, actually, now that I look at it, this is still not a critical mistake. Critical mistake was on the next move here. White can still take on h4. I did not see this actually during the game. Takes there king g3, and now attacking both of my pieces. I most likely have to play here, take this pawn, but d6, this d pawn now will be quite annoying to handle. Because bishop goes back, rook d1. Yeah, as you can see, rook g4, it says king e3. I don't have rook e4 check. I don't have the way to get behind that pawn, so this may end up in a draw, something like that. Check, king c5. And I think white has enough here to hold the draw. This d pawn will try to keep going forward, basically, and most likely I either have to do something very passive to defend it, or may even have to give the entire bishop. So if I do give the bishop, then most likely gonna end up in a draw. Well, she goes d6 here. I play knight g4 check. We are still here very close to very much around the draw still, but you gotta understand, this is a time scramble. We're both playing on seconds, so playing this precisely, I would say, is almost impossible. As you can see, yeah, king to h1 was a better try than king to g1. I guess the reason for that is because of what happened in the game. If I try to do that, then this move h3 is a little too slow, which ended up being the case in the game, because after king g1 I played h3, and once after bishop c6, trying to push this d7 pawn, I go rook to b2, which wow, apparently says is a mistake. Rook to b3 would be a better push, but practically this is, man, I'm not seeing rook b3 during the actual game here. 95 here, and then bishop here, rook goes to b5, I go rook d3, check, apparently king g7, rook d8, and white is still holding this somehow. Yeah, I don't know. Bishop d5, bishop d7. Man, good luck finding this under seconds. And then look at this move, bishop to e6. Well, get out of here. All right, bishop c6 was played here, and I go rook b2, which apparently throws away the win. But to see a draw here is, I think, is very difficult. So on rook b2, I'm threatening to go rook g to check and basically checkmate the king. If he goes king h1, knight f2 is a mate, and if you go to f1, so let's say you push d7, right? Then I'll go here, you go there, I have bishop d3, and yeah, I think you're getting mated here. Knight e3 check here, and rook e2. It's a pretty nasty mate, actually. In the center of the board, and you can go on the other side of the board. So d7 is a blunder. So with seconds on the clock here, my opponent panicked and played this move, rook to f1, which gives now the material to black. So the defensive move, the only defensive move, was here, and rook e8 check, and then pushing d7. Point being that after I take here, let's say I go rook g2 check, king h1 is obviously mate, so that's a no-no. You have to go king f1, and now I can go rook check here, but you can go king to e1. This is the entire point. Okay, when rook was on e8, there was no king e8. Okay, so you need to free that e1 square for the king. Okay, then king e1, and now if I take there, this guy is hanging on g4. You'll most likely play rook g3 now to attack these guys, but white can just move the rook away, and when I do h2, bishop b7, and you are on time to catch the pawn. If I take there, then king f2, and you'll be able to catch the h pawn. So bishop versus 3 pawns should be a draw, especially most likely I'm gonna lose the h2 pawn. If I go rook g1 check and then try to promote, I think this should be easily holdable for white, because white king gets on time to defend the g5 pawn, and then 2 versus 1 should be easily drawable. Now she plays rook f1, well, luckily for me, so basically breaks the resistance in the last second, literally. One mistake and it was too late. Then I go just simply knight f2. There's actually a fun line here. Since knight f2 is the mate, I thought I could have done bishop d3, and point is that if he goes d7, I take there, and if you promote to d8, I go king h7, and now I have this move knight f2, which you cannot stop. Basically checkmate threat. You have to play queen d4, and I still go knight f2 and king g1, then move the rook away, and this should still be a win, because I'm just gonna end up in exchange and 2 pawns up. Yeah, I actually saw that during the game, but I was like, man, let me have it safe. Just play knight f2, take there, d7, take there, and whenever he takes back, I just take on f3 and win the game. So yeah, after bishop d7, she resigned. So that was game 3. So after a shaky start in the first round, I think second day turned out quite well for me. So at this point, I am 2.5 out of 3 going into the 4th round, and I had 2 blacks out of 3 games, so I was hoping that the next game I can get white colors against a strong opponent, but we'll see what happened. That's not quite what happened in the next round, but I guess we'll see that in the next video. All right, cheers guys. If you did actually watched all along, man, I am very appreciative, very thankful for your attention, yeah, let's keep working on our game together. Hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.